The sun was setting behind the hills of the alien village. The sky turned orange, then red, and shadows stretched across the dusty ground. Children gathered in the open yard, laughing and shouting as they kicked a bright ball back and forth. Their voices echoed through the narrow streets, filling the air with joy and energy. But at the far edge of the yard, sitting alone on a broken stone, was a small alien girl. Her hair was messy, her clothes were torn, and her large eyes followed the ball with silent longing. She wanted to run, she wanted to laugh with them, but her body betrayed her. Her left leg ended at the knee, leaving only an empty space where life had been stolen. The other children did not look at her kindly. Some whispered and pointed, some laughed openly, calling her useless. She lowered her gaze each time their cruel voices reached her. The ball rolled close once, stopping just in front of her stone. Her heart raced as she reached out, but before she could touch it, a boy snatched it away. Not for broken ones, he sneered before kicking it hard back into the game. Her fingers curled tightly, but she said nothing, only watched as they left her behind again. Day after day, this was her life. She became a shadow in her own village, a ghost among the living. Her only friends were the stones she sat on and the wind that brushed her face. Sometimes she imagined she could run. She imagined her missing leg was whole again. But when she opened her eyes, she was still trapped in the same cruel truth. That evening, as the children cheered, a stranger walked past the yard. He was not from their kind. His skin was different, his clothes strange. He was a human merchant, carrying tools and small machines to sell in the market. At first he paid no attention, his mind full of trade and travel. But then his eyes caught sight of her, the lonely figure sitting apart from the others. Something in her stillness stopped. Him? He looked again, saw her gaze fixed on the ball, saw the hurt behind her silence. And for a moment, he forgot the path he was walking. The human paused, standing at the edge of the courtyard. He had seen many villages, many faces, but this one struck his heart, not because of beauty, not because of words, but because of her quiet pain. It reminded him of something deep inside, a memory he thought he had left behind. He shook his head, forcing himself to move on, but the image stayed with him. Her eyes followed him even after he turned the corner, eyes that spoke without a voice, asking a question no one else heard. The girl noticed him too. She had seen humans before, travelers and merchants passing through, but none of them ever looked. At her, none of them slowed their steps. This one did, if only for a second. It was enough to make her heart beat faster, enough to spark a tiny flame in the cold corner of her chest. When the children finally tired and left, she stayed behind. She stood shakily, leaning on a stick she had carved herself. The dust swirled around her feet as she limped away from the yard. Her home was small, made of stone and clay, empty except for her and silence. Her parents were long gone, taken by sickness when she was very young. She survived with scraps, sometimes helped by distant relatives but mostly forgotten. Loneliness was her blanket, silence her companion. But tonight, for the first time in a long time, she thought of something else. The strange human who had looked at her, not with mockery, not with pity, but with something she could not name. That night, as she lay on the cold floor of her hut, she closed her eyes. She imagined herself standing again with two legs, running across the field. The ball soared through the air and she leaped to catch it, her laughter mixing with the others. For a moment, her dream felt real. For a moment, she was not broken, but then she woke, the ache in her heart sharper than ever. Still, the memory of the human's gaze stayed with her. She did not know why, but it felt like a promise that her story was not over, a promise that maybe, just maybe, her life could change. And somewhere across the village, the human merchant lay awake too. The image of the lonely girl would not leave his mind. He told himself he was only tired, that it was none of his concern. But deep down, he knew the truth. Something had begun the moment their eyes met, something that would not let him rest. And in the quiet of the night, two lives, so different yet so close, took their first step toward destiny. The next morning, the village market was alive with noise. Merchants shouted prices, Children darted between stalls, and smells of spices filled the air. The human merchant walked slowly, arranging his tools and gadgets on a cloth. His hands moved, but his mind was far away. He kept seeing her, the lonely girl with one missing leg, sitting on that broken stone. Her eyes had followed him like a silent echo, and he could not forget them. As customers came and went, he barely spoke. One villager noticed his distracted mood and frowned. "You look troubled, human. Are your goods broken?" the man asked. The human shook his head, forcing a smile. "No. Everything works, it's just nothing." But inside he knew it was not nothing. It was her. Later in the day, when business slowed, he asked a question. He asked a local woman, who sat weaving baskets, "Who is the small girl, the one who sits alone at the yard's edge?" The woman looked up sharply, her expression dark. "She is cursed, useless, she brings only shame," she muttered, shaking her head. "She lost her leg to sickness when she was a baby. Now she only takes space, better not to notice her." The human's jaw tightened at the cruelty in her voice, but he said nothing, only nodded and walked away. The words dug into his chest like sharp stones. He had seen poor children before, had seen hunger, had seen loss, but never had he seen a whole village turn cold against one so small it made no sense. How could they laugh while she suffered? Why did no one try to help her? Why did no one even try to let her play? That night, in the small inn where he stayed, he laid out his bag of tools, metal scraps, wires, old human tech, salvaged from wrecked machines. Most merchants sold them for cheap, but he kept them close. He stared at the pieces under the dim lantern light. Ideas moved in his mind like sparks. What if he could build something to give her what life had stolen? He had once trained as a mechanic before becoming a trader. He knew the art of repairing machines, fixing what was broken. But this was not just about a machine. This was about giving a child back her dignity. He picked up a bent metal rod and shaped it carefully. The sound of the hammer echoed through the night. Each strike was heavy, each spark a reminder of her eyes. His heart pounded as he sketched rough designs on the table, a frame that could fit her leg, joints that could bend, gears that could move. It was not perfect, maybe not even safe, but it was something better than leaving her broken. As he worked, doubts crept into his mind. What if she refused? What if the village stopped him? What if the device broke and hurt her even more? He clenched his fists, whispering to himself, "No, she deserves a chance, even if I fail. She deserves it." The hours passed. The lantern burned low. Sweat dripped from his forehead. Tools scattered around the floor. At last, he had the beginning of something. Not a toy, not a decoration, but a promise in metal and wire. He stared at it, breathing hard. Tomorrow, he thought. Tomorrow I will find her again. Meanwhile, the girl lay in her small hut, awake on the cold floor. Her stomach growled with hunger, but her mind was full of strange feelings. The image of the human's eyes haunted her. Why did he look at her that way, different from everyone else? Why did it feel like he had seen her, not just ignored her? She touched the empty space where her leg once was and closed her eyes. In her dreams she ran again, the human's shadow beside her. She did not know why, but hope flickered in her chest. The next day the human walked back to the yard. Children were playing again, their ball bouncing high in the air. And there she was, sitting on the same broken stone, silent, watching, alone. He stepped closer this time, his voice gentle. "Do you want to play?" he asked. Her eyes widened, her mouth opened, but no words came out. No one had ever asked her that before. She only lowered her gaze, shaking her head slowly. The other children laughed from afar, shouting, "She cannot play. Leave her, human." But he ignored them, his attention only on her. "Come tomorrow," he whispered softly so only she could hear. "I want to show you something." Then he walked away, leaving her staring after him, confused and curious. Her heart raced. Her hands trembled. What could he possibly want to show her? Why her, of all people? That night the village fell asleep, but two hearts stayed restless. The girl clutched her blanket, wondering about tomorrow. The human stayed in his room, tightening bolts, adjusting gears. Each sound of his tools was a promise. Each turn of the screw was a step toward something greater. Neither of them knew it yet, but destiny was moving, and the first spark of change was about to ignite. The morning sun rose slowly over the alien village. The market stalls opened again, voices filled the streets, and children shouted in the distance. But the human merchant did not go to the market this day. Instead, he carried a bundle of strange tools and scraps to a small shed behind the inn. It was dusty and forgotten, a place where no one bothered to look. Here, he would begin his secret work. The shed smelled of old wood and rust. Broken farming tools leaned against the wall. Cobwebs hung from the ceiling. But he cleared a space. On the table, setting down wires, metal rods, gears, and old drone parts. His hands moved with purpose, yet his heart beat fast. He knew if the villagers discovered what he was building, there could be trouble. They already hated the girl, and giving her strength might anger them even more. But still he worked, his thoughts fixed only on her face, the way her eyes had looked when he asked if she wanted to play. That mixture of fear and longing, it drove him forward. He pulled out his tools and began shaping metal. Each strike of the hammer rang through the shed like a secret bell. Sparks flew, the air grew hot, his fingers blackened with grease. Slowly, piece by piece, something began to take form. A frame shaped like a leg, with joints that could bend and gears that could turn. It was not smooth or beautiful, but it was strong. A human design, born from both memory and hope. At times he paused to sketch rough lines on scraps of paper. He remembered his old days as an apprentice, back when he had studied engineering before he left Earth to trade among the stars. His teachers had said machines could only follow commands, but now he was building something more, something to give life where life had been stolen. This was no ordinary device. It was a chance for a child to stand outside. The voices of children drifted through the air. He heard their laughter, their game of ball echoing through the street. For a moment he closed his eyes, imagining the girl running among them, her laughter joining theirs, her steps no longer heavy with pain. The image burned into him and his hands moved faster. He worked through the day without rest, but whispers were already starting in the village. Some merchants noticed he had not gone to the market. They saw smoke rising from the old shed. "What is the human building?" they muttered. "Some say he is making weapons." Another guessed. "Others say he is wasting time with junk." A third added. No one suspected the truth, but curiosity spread like fire, and danger grew with it. As night fell, the human lit a lantern inside the shed. The half-finished leg gleamed faintly in the yellow light. It was crude, yet it held promise. He tested the joints, adjusted the straps, and tightened every screw. Still, he knew it was not ready. It needed more balance, more strength. But time was short, and the girl was waiting. He whispered to himself, "Tomorrow, she will see it." Meanwhile, the girl sat again at the edge of the yard, her stomach empty, her hands cold but her heart restless. She remembered his words. "Come tomorrow, I want to show you something." What could he mean? Why her? No one had ever promised her anything before. She wanted to hope, but fear whispered in her ear. What if he was only mocking her? What if this was another cruel trick? And yet, deep inside, she wanted to believe. That night, the wind howled through the village. The children slept soundly, the elders dreamed, but two hearts stayed awake. The girl lay on her rough blanket staring at the roof. The human bent over his table, his lantern burning low. With each turn of the wrench, each click of the gear, the line between fate and choice grew thinner. He was building more than a machine, he was building hope. At last, near midnight, he leaned back, exhausted. Before him lay the almost complete leg, not polished, not perfect, but ready for a test. He ran his hand across the cold metal and smiled faintly. "Tomorrow," he whispered. "Tomorrow she will walk again." But outside the shed, in the shadows, someone was watching. A pair of sharp eyes had seen the glow of his lantern, had heard the sound of hammers and gears, A villager slipped away silently into the night. His lips curled into a bitter smile. The human is hiding something, he whispered to himself. And soon, the whole village would know. The dawn broke quietly. Over the village, mist curled between the stone huts and the air was cool and still. Children were already awake, chasing one another through the dusty courtyard, their laughter sharp against the silence. But the girl was not among them. She sat alone on her usual stone, her stick leaning against her shoulder, her eyes heavy with doubt. The human had told her to come. But what if it was just another cruel joke? Her heart beat faster with every passing moment, her fingers twisting nervously in her lap. Then at last, she saw him. The human merchant stepped out from the shadows of the old shed, carrying something wrapped in cloth. His eyes met hers, and he gave the smallest nod. "Come with me," he whispered when he reached her side. The other children stopped their play for a moment, staring curiously, but the human ignored them and the girl followed slowly, limping on her stick. Together they slipped away, disappearing behind the market stalls, into the hidden shed where the lantern's light still lingered. Inside, the girl froze. On the table before her lay the strange creation, shining faintly in the morning glow, metal shaped like a leg, with straps and joints. She gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Is that for me?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The human nodded, setting the cloth aside. "Yes, for you," he said softly. "A gift, a chance to stand, a chance to run." Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head in disbelief. No one has ever thought of me like this," she whispered. Her heart was racing, her body trembling between fear and hope. The human knelt beside her, lifting the device gently. "May I?" he asked, his voice calm, patient. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. Her stick clattered to the floor as he helped her sit on the table. He strapped the device around her thigh, tightening the leather belts. The gears clicked softly. The metal frame hugged her small body. When he stepped back, the girl looked down at it, her breath caught. Her heart pounded as if the world itself had shifted. "Try to stand," the human said gently, his hand hovering near to catch her if she fell. The girl swallowed hard, her legs trembling. She pressed her hands against the table and slowly pushed herself upright. The metal leg clicked, adjusted, steadied. Her body shook. But then, for the first time, she was standing on 2 feet. Tears spilled down her cheeks, her voice broke. I'm standing, I can stand." The human smiled, his chest tight with pride. "Yes, you can, and soon, you will walk." Step by shaky step, she moved across the shed. At first, she stumbled, the gears groaning, the straps biting into her skin. But with each step, her balance grew steadier, her body stronger. She laughed, a sound so pure it made the human's eyes burn with emotion. Her laughter was like sunlight breaking through years of storm. She turned, her face glowing. "I can walk. I can really walk." The human nodded, his voice low. "And one day, you will run." But they were not alone. At the window, hidden in the shadows, a pair of eyes watched with narrowed suspicion. The villager who had seen the human's lantern the night before had returned. He saw the girl walking on the strange device, saw her joy, saw the human's smile. His face twisted with anger and jealousy. "This is not right," he muttered under his breath. "She was meant to be weak, meant to be forgotten. This will bring nothing but trouble." Quietly, he slipped, away into the streets, his voice already whispering to others. By nightfall, the elders would know. Inside the shed, the girl did not hear the danger that was coming. Her world was filled only with the sound of her steps. Each movement was a miracle, each breath a gift. She walked back to the human and threw her small arms around him. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking. "Thank you for seeing me." The human placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You are not broken," he said firmly. "You were never broken. You only needed someone to believe in you." Her tears fell against his shirt, her body shaking with both joy and fear. For the first time in her life, she felt alive. As the day faded, the human covered the device once more. "Keep this secret for now," he warned softly. "The village will not understand." "Not yet." The girl nodded, though her heart was too full of excitement to think of fear. She limped back to her hut. With the legs still attached, her steps slow but steady. Every child she passed stared in shock, whispering among themselves, but she held her head high, her chest full of new strength. And in her heart, one truth echoed again and again. She was no longer a shadow on the edge. She was someone who could walk, who could dream. But as the stars rose, the whispers spread. And by morning, the whole village would know of the human's gift. Some would marvel, some would envy, and some would plot to take it away. The girl did not yet know the storm that was gathering. For now, she only knew the joy of her first steps. Steps that would change everything. Steps that had awakened not only hope, but danger. The morning sun rose brightly, lighting the village with golden rays. The children gathered again in the courtyard, their ball bouncing high in the air. Their voices rang with laughter. But this day was different. For when the girl appeared, she was no longer limping with her stick. She walked on two legs, slow but steady, the metal glinting faintly beneath her clothes. The other children froze, their eyes wide, their mouths open in shock. At first, silence filled the yard. Then whispers began, spreading like fire through dry grass. "She's walking, how is she walking?" One child muttered. "Look at her, she has human tricks strapped to her body." Another sneered, jealousy stirred in their hearts, twisting their wonder into bitterness. For so long they had mocked her, they had called her useless. But now, she stood among them, no longer broken, no longer silent, and it unsettled them. It made them angry. One boy, larger than the rest, stepped forward, his eyes sharp with envy. He kicked the ball hard so it landed at her feet. "Let's see if your new leg makes you strong enough to play," he taunted. The girl bent down, her hands trembling as she touched the ball. Her heart pounded, fear and excitement battling inside her chest. She pushed the ball back gently, her smile timid but real. The boy snarled and shoved her shoulder, making her stumble. "Don't smile, you don't belong with us. You're just a broken thing with a human toy," he hissed. The ball rolled away and the laughter of the other children rose again. But it was not the same laughter as before. It was sharp, cruel, heavy with jealousy. The girl's eyes filled. With tears, her body shook, but she did not fall. The human appeared then, stepping out from the crowd, his face stern, his voice like iron. "Enough," he said, his words cutting through the noise. The children froze, their laughter dying in their throats. He walked to the girl's side, placing his hand on her shoulder. "She belongs here as much as any of you," he said firmly. His eyes swept over the group, his voice steady but burning. "She is stronger than you think, stronger than your cruelty, stronger than your jealousy." The boy who had shoved her glared, his fists tight. "Why do you care, human?" he spat. "She is nothing, she was meant to stay broken." The human's jaw clenched, his heart pounding with anger. "She is not nothing," he growled. "She is everything you are too blind to see." By now the elders had gathered at the edge of the yard, drawn by the noise. Their eyes narrowed as they saw the girl standing tall on her new leg. Their whispers grew dark, their faces hard. "This is against the order," one muttered. "She was meant to be weak." Another shook his head. "The human meddles too much, he has broken the balance." The human stepped forward, his body tense. "She deserves a chance," he said, his voice carrying. "Is it so wrong to give her what life has stolen?" The elders frowned, their silence heavy. One finally spoke, his voice deep and commanding. "If she wishes to keep this device, then she must prove she is worthy." The girl's breath caught, her heart hammering in her chest. "What do you mean?" the human asked, his voice sharp. The elder's eyes narrowed. "She will face a test, the same game she has watched all her life. If she can play as the others play, if she can win, she may keep the leg. But if she fails, it must be destroyed and she will return to what she was." The girl gasped, fear tightening around her chest. The human's face turned pale with anger. "This is not fair," he said. But the elders did not bend. The children whispered, their eyes hungry with curiosity. Some wanted to see her fall, others wanted to see her rise. The yard felt heavy with tension, the air thick like a storm before lightning. The human knelt beside the girl, his voice low. "You don't have to do this. We can leave. We can go where they cannot touch you." But the girl shook her head, her tears drying, her jaw tightening with determination. "No," she whispered. "All my life I have watched. I have sat at the edge. I will not run anymore." Her small hands clenched into fists, her eyes fierce with a new fire. "I will play, and I will win, not just for me, but to show them I am alive." The human's chest tightened with pride and fear. He placed his hand over hers, his voice steady. "Then run like the wind, little one, run and show them the truth." The girl nodded, her heart pounding. Her fear turned into strength, her weakness into courage. For the first time, she was not just a shadow. She was ready to fight for her place in the world. And so the test was set. By the next sunrise, the game would begin. The whole village would gather to watch. Some waiting to see her fall, others waiting to see a miracle. The human looked into the girl's eyes, and in that moment he knew, whatever happened, she would never again be alone. The sun rose high above the village, brighter than ever. The courtyard was filled with people, young and old. The children gathered, the ball resting in the dust, and in the center stood the small girl with the shining leg. Her heart pounded so loudly she thought the whole world could hear it. This was the moment, the test that would decide everything. The elders stood at the edge, their faces stern and cold. They had declared the rule. If she could play and win, she may keep the leg. If she failed, it must be destroyed, and she would return to her broken life. The villagers whispered among themselves, their voices sharp with doubt. "Too weak," one said. "She will fall in moments." "She is only strong because of the human," another sneered. But there were others whose eyes held a flicker of hope. They had mocked her before, but deep inside they wondered, what if she could truly stand equal? The human stood close, his eyes never leaving her. He bent down and whispered, his voice steady. "Remember, this is not just a game. This is your life. But do not fear them. Run like the wind. Believe in yourself." The girl nodded, though her throat was dry, her hands shaking. She felt the weight of the entire village pressing down on her. But somewhere deep inside, a fire burned stronger than fear. She wanted to prove them wrong. She wanted to prove herself right. The game began. The ball was kicked high, soaring through the air. Dust rose as children sprinted after it, their voices filling the courtyard. The girl stumbled at first, her metal leg clicking, the gears whining. The crowd laughed, cruelly. "See, she cannot keep up," they jeered. But the human clenched his fists, shouting encouragement. "Steady, focus, you can do this." The girl bit her lip, her eyes sharp, and pushed forward again, step by step. The leg adjusted, her body finding its rhythm. Her balance grew steadier, her stride stronger. She chased the ball, her heart racing. At first she was far behind, but soon the distance closed. Her new leg carried her faster than she had ever imagined. The children glanced back, their faces turning from smugness to shock. "She's catching up," one gasped. "No. Impossible," another muttered. But the truth was before their eyes. The ball bounced toward her, rolling across the dust. Her hands trembled as she ran for it, her chest burning. She reached it, kicked with her good foot, and sent it spinning into the air. The crowd gasped, their whispers rising. The girl's eyes widened in disbelief. She had touched the ball. She had truly played. Her heart soared, her laughter burst free for the first time in years. She was no longer just watching. She was part of the game, but the challenge was not over. The bigger boy, the one who hated her the most, stepped forward, his eyes blazing. He shoved her as the ball rolled near again, hoping she would fall. The girl staggered, the gears in her leg screeched, her body swayed dangerously. Gasps filled the air, and the elders leaned forward, waiting to see her break. But at the last moment, the human shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Stand strong, little one, stand strong." Her fingers dug into the ground. Her teeth clenched, and with a cry she rose again, the metal leg locking into place. She stood taller than before, her eyes burning with fire. The boy tried to grab the ball, but this time she was faster. Her prosthetic leg moved with surprising speed, carrying her ahead. She kicked with all her strength, sending the ball flying high into the air. It soared past the children, past the line of the game. The crowd erupted in gasps, some in disbelief, some in awe. The ball landed far, far beyond the usual line, rolling into the dust. The girl stood panting, sweat dripping down her forehead, but her smile was radiant, fierce, unstoppable. Silence followed, heavy and sharp. Then the whispers changed, voices murmuring. She did it. She touched the ball. She sent it flying. She is not weak, not anymore. The elders exchanged looks, their stern faces cracking with surprise. One of them spoke slowly. The test is not finished. But even his voice wavered, for they had seen the impossible. The children stood frozen, staring at her with wide eyes. Some looked afraid, others curious, and one by one, their envy began to crumble into something else. Respect. The first seed of respect growing where mockery once ruled. The human stepped forward, pride shining in his eyes. "You see?" he said firmly, his voice ringing across the yard. "She is no longer a shadow. She is no longer broken. She is one of you." His words struck deep, echoing in every heart. The girl's chest rose and fell as she stood tall, her gaze meeting the crowd. Her voice was soft but steady. "I am not weak, I never was, I only needed a chance." The test was not yet fully over, but in that moment, the village had already changed. The air felt different, the silence heavy with awe. The girl had done what none thought possible, and as the sun blazed above, she knew one truth: she would never return to the edge again. The ball rolled to a stop in the dust, far beyond where it had ever landed before. For a moment, the whole courtyard was silent. The children stared, the elders froze. Even the wind seemed to pause, and in the center of it all stood the girl, breathing hard, her face shining with sweat and fire. Her metal leg gleamed in the sunlight, no longer a secret, no longer a shame. It was proof that she had fought, proof that she had won. The elders shifted uncomfortably, their strict masks breaking. They could not deny what they had seen. The girl had passed the test. She had played. She had risen higher than any of them believed possible. One elder spoke, his voice heavy. "She has done what we thought could not be done. She has earned her place." The others nodded slowly, reluctant but unable to resist the truth. The crowd began to murmur, their whispers turning into shouts. "Did you see her? She stood, she ran, she kicked like the wind. No longer weak, no longer broken," another voice cried. The village, which once mocked her, now echoed with awe. The children approached slowly, their jealousy fading into wonder. The boy who had pushed her before looked down, shame burning in his cheeks. He did not speak, but the girl saw his eyes and knew he would never shove her again. Another child smiled shyly and held out the ball. "Play with us," she whispered, her voice small but honest. The girl's heart skipped, her chest tight with joy. She reached out, touched the ball, and for the first time she was part of the circle, not outside watching, not sitting in silence, but standing among them. The human stood at the edge, watching. His chest was heavy, but his heart soared. He had seen many places, sold many things, but this was different. This was not a trade. This was not business. This was life. New life. Born because he had chosen to care. The girl looked at him across the courtyard, their eyes meeting. Her smile was brighter than the sun, her voice rising above the noise. "Thank you," she called. "Thank you for giving me a chance." Tears stung the human's eyes, but he only nodded. He did not need to speak, for she already knew. Every step she took was his answer. Every laugh she gave was his reward. The children kicked the ball again, and this time she ran after it. Her metal leg clicked and whirred, but it carried her strong and steady, The dust rose behind her. Her laughter rang loud. She was faster than she had ever dreamed, and when she struck the ball, it soared high, the sound of triumph echoing across the village. The villagers cheered now, no longer mocking, no longer cruel. They shouted her name, clapped their hands, and called her one of their own. The elders bowed their heads grudgingly but respectfully. Even they could not deny the miracle before them. The girl was no longer a shadow, no longer a ghost. She was alive, whole, and free. As the game went on, the human stepped back, blending into the crowd. He did not need to stand in the center. The story was hers now. He had given her the tool, but she had given herself the courage, and in that balance true strength was born. He whispered to himself, "Run free, little one, run further than they can ever imagine." The sun dipped lower, the sky glowing with fire. The ball flew again, and again the children shouted with joy, and always she was there, running beside them, her prosthetic leg carrying her like wings. Her heart felt light, her soul alive. She had dreamed of this moment so many times, but reality was even greater. No longer did she sit alone at the edge. Now she was at the center, her laughter blending. With theirs, for the first time, she truly belonged. Night came, stars filling the sky like silver sparks. The courtyard grew quiet. The children went home one by one, but the girl stayed for a moment longer, staring up at the stars. Her hand brushed against the metal leg, and she smiled. It was not just a machine. It was freedom. It was hope. And it had given her back her life. She whispered softly, so only the wind could hear. "I will never sit alone again. I will run. I will fly." The human turned away, his footsteps soft against the earth. He knew his journey would soon take him away from this place, but he also knew that part of him would always remain here, in the laughter of a once lonely girl, in the strength of her new steps, and though he did not say it aloud, he felt it deep inside. This was the greatest gift he had ever given. Not a machine, not a device, but a chance for a child to be free. And so under the watch of the stars, the girl walked home, her step strong, her spirit unbroken. Tomorrow she would play again. Tomorrow she would run further. Her life had changed forever. She was no longer the lonely girl at the edge. She was the girl who ran free,